In this video, I'd like to talk a little bit about the 5711, the recent announcement from Patek Philippe, and why I think it's interesting, why I think it's relevant. I know from a personal standpoint, most of us, this is a completely insignificant release. We're never going to see one in person. We're never going to have the opportunity to purchase one. And anytime you see something that goes for multiple levels of the original retail price on the secondary market, it incites a little bit more emotion, I think, for good or for bad. You might be on one side or the other of that aisle. But let's talk about the Nautilus and why this is significant. I know some of you that watch me, you've reached out and you've said things recently like, Bruce, I just don't get the Nautilus. I don't get the appeal. And I don't get the appeal of some other brands that are very hyped and very loved. Tell me what I'm missing here. And I go, you know what? You're not really missing much. This is a very subjective hobby, but I also kind of relate it to art or to architecture or to literary art. And anytime you get a figure that's very well known as the creator, and whether it's with a watch or with a building or, a work of art, the subject matter matters as well. And so with this watch, this was designed by Gerald Genta in the mid-1970s. And Gerald Genta will, go down in history, in my opinion, as the greatest or the most significant watch designer in history. And I'd like to make a distinction. I'm not talking about movement designer or technology developer. I'm talking about just the overall design of a watch. He is one of, if not the most influential when it comes to his designs. And the Nautilus, this was his second attempt at, using a porthole of a ship as loose inspiration for the overall design. And I think artists sometimes, yes, they create the Mona Lisa the first time, right? Leonardo da Vinci in 1503, but sometimes they have to revisit their idea and they get it right the second time, or maybe the third or the fourth or the fifth time. They perfect the design. The first time he used the porthole as inspiration, he came out with the Royal Oak. And depending on what side of history you believe, he either designed that for Bulova or for Audemars Piguet. And nevertheless, I love that design. I love that watch, but it is a little bit more simple in its representation of a porthole. It's very industrial looking. And this Nautilus, it's a little bit more nuanced in its inspiration. And it kind of reminds me, when a design is not quite a carbon copy and it's more open to interpretation, I think it can be stronger. It kind of reminds me of the tank from Louis Cartier in 1970, not then, 1917 is what I meant to say. It kind of reminds me of that. So it's a great design, and you pair Gerald Genta, the name, with Patek Philippe, the watch house, and you have something that will be significant for future generations. It's not just going to fall by the wayside. People are going to pay attention to this pairing in the same way that people pay attention to a Frank Lloyd Wright design building, and they appreciate the residences in Illinois. But when it's the subject matter is a little bit more iconic, I guess you could say, or specific, like Falling Water or the Guggenheim, then it becomes more of a recognized and hyped product. Whether it deserves it or not, more often than not, it definitely deserves the attention. I look at works of art from Da Vinci or Van Gogh. And when you pair a name with a concept and it's married to a pleasing degree, if it has strength and validity, it will always be iconic and it will always be sought after. And you can not necessarily enjoy it to the fullest in terms of personal aesthetic or whatnot, but there will be hype, there will be attention paid, and I think that's just the reality of the Nautilus for future years. Now, here's where I might sound a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and I hope I don't come across as too facetious here. This is meant more for entertainment purposes. But when I look at this release, this Tiffany and Company version, this limited edition, I almost get the effect or the feeling that Patek Philippe is looking at the market. They're looking at Rolex. They notice them doing the Oyster Perpetual 41 in that turquoise color. They're noticing people gravitating toward these basic mass-produced stainless steel sports watches. And the demand is such that they're going for double, triple retail price on the secondary market. And Patek Philippe goes, okay, Everyone's telling me that Rolex is trying to up their game and take my spot in the luxury segment, but that's cute. Let me show you how it's done. Like, I almost get that vibe when I look at this watch because they're taking this iconic design, this Gerald Genta design, this Nautilus, the most in-demand sports watch in the world. And they've decided, you know what? We're going to discontinue this. It's going goodbye. And the last hurrah for this watch, we're going to co-brand with Tiffany and Company. We're going to do an official Tiffany and Company dial, and we're going to show everyone how to do that turquoise color and how to, I guess, I don't want to say manipulate, but show everyone in the market, create such a demand that this will go not only for 2 or 3 times retail, but a lot more than that. This specific watch retails at $52,635, which is actually quite a bit more than the standard Nautilus. And I don't think it's going to end up on the secondary market all that often because, again, there are only 170 units available, and Tiffany and Company is entirely in charge of allocation. You can only buy this watch from one of 3 boutiques, one in New York City, one in San Francisco, and one in Beverly Hills. And so honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if it took Tiffany and Company maybe 2 years, 3 years to be very judicious in who they allot these watches to, who they sell these watches to. I don't think they will be flipped all that often. In fact, you're never going to see this watch on Chrono 24 or Watch You Seek. Whenever it does come up for availability to the public, it's going to be from an auction house, like there is going to be one available this December. In just a couple days from now, on the 11th of December, Philips is auctioning one of these 170 units. And I will say it's in reference to the 170th year anniversary of Patek Philippe collaborating with Tiffany and Company occasionally. So that's the reasoning there. And I'm not sure if Patek Philippe is selling 170 units and then they just produced an extra one for this charity auction, or whether that is coming from the 170 units total and 169 will be available to the general public. I'm not sure with that. But Tiffany and Company, they decided a charity that would get all of the proceeds of this auction, of this sale, and they decided on the Nature Conservancy. And so I'm curious to see what it actually goes for. Do I think it's going to go for double retail, triple retail, even quadruple retail? I do. In fact, this is hard for me to wrap my mind around, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it go for over $1 million. I really wouldn't, because if you think about it, you're getting something truly rare. And again, it is the last hurrah of one of the most iconic and important sports pieces from one of the most prestigious luxury brands in history in terms of watches. I mean, it just doesn't get more significant than this. And I think the winning bidder is going to take that into consideration. And they're going to say, you know what, I'm getting the very first. And I can choose to be anonymous, or I can choose to purchase this with my name out there. I will have the first one. I will have one of very few. And this thing is going to go for a lot of money. Let's say it goes for over $1 million. Let's say they can drop $1 million on this watch. They're not doing it generally based off of speculation of appreciation because they're not hurting for money. But they want that luxury exclusivity. They want to own the crown jewel that not a lot of people will be able to put into their watch collections. And so I think that is a very significant point to consider. And anytime these watches end up for sale at an auction, I think it's going to be few and far between. I think it might take years. It might take someone to buy one of these at retail, at one of these 3 boutiques, and then they pass away, their children inherit that watch, maybe a few years go by, and they decide, hey, I'm going to sell this now. I'm going to take it to Philips or to another auction house, and I'm going to sell it. I think, again, it's going to be very few and far between anytime these are brought to market. And so just having that exclusivity and seeing the appreciation, again, I wouldn't be surprised to see $1 million or more. And I guess it's a good thing that it's going to a charitable organization, at least the sale of this first Tiffany and Company co-branded limited edition from Patek. Let me leave you with a couple thoughts here. This is funny in my opinion. You look at the case back and you can see a exhibition case back, and behind it there is the lovely in-house hand-executed movement from Patek Philippe. It really is a lovely work of art. But here's what's funny. It's a little crass in my opinion, considering the marriage of, Patek Philippe and Tiffany and Company. You've got this screening done on the sapphire crystal and it's obscuring this movement. It's so unexpected. I criticize Seiko when they do that. I criticize Grand Seiko when they do that on a $500 watch or a $5,000 watch. On a $50,000 last hurrah of the 5711, done with Tiffany and Company, done in that bold color, limited to 3 different boutiques globally. And it's got a screened sapphire case back. I mean, that is just bold and brass and something you would expect from a fashion house, right? And not Patek Philippe and not from Tiffany and Company. So I think that's kind of funny. And then there is an Easter egg found in the screening of the crystal because Tiffany was fairly recently acquired by the LVMH luxury group. And if you look closely in one of the one of the numbers, you can see LVMH done in relief. And I think that's cool. So again, I'd like to see Tiffany and Company kind of branch out and collaborate with other brands like they have in the past with Movado and Zenith and Girard-Perregaux and Rolex and Patek Philippe. I'd like to see that happen more often. And I'm going to also make a prediction. I think we're going to see more of this turquoise color from brands not necessarily associated with Tiffany or may have never associated with Tiffany in the past. I know they've been done from time to time, but I think we're going to see it more often. We've already kind of seen it here with Oris, with the Cotton Candy Diver 65 in bronze. We've seen it with, Shamelessly from Timex, and that has gone over like a Led Zeppelin, But it wouldn't surprise me to see other brands, maybe Breiling, maybe Omega, maybe Grand Seiko, maybe these brands will start gravitating toward this trend, this very popular trend of doing the Tiffany color. And it might take a year or two, but I think we're going to see it a whole lot more than we currently do. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there. And I'm looking forward to reading the comments. What do you think about the Nautilus? What do you think about the history and how it relates to famous art or architecture or literary works? Is it iconic? Does it deserve to stand the test of time for decades? And what do you think the value is gonna be on this auction on the 11th? Where do you see it ending? And is that appropriate? Is this madness? I'm curious to hear your take. Thank you for watching today. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have an awesome day. I'll see you next time.